Hit job or damage control? I say that it was a hit job. I'm talking about George Stephanopoulos' interview with President Biden. I believe it was a total hit job. I thought it was a setup. It was unedited, apparently. We're going to play the video for you. I'm going to comment on the video. I'm going to offer my opinion sometimes throughout, but we're going to be stopping it every few minutes for copyright infringement purposes. And then we're just going to comment on it. But if you have not heard it in its entirety, the left is trying their darndest to kick this old man out, and he is not wanting to go. It is evident, it is clear in this interview. As a matter of fact, after you hear the interview, it's even more clear that Biden isn't going to go anywhere. At least he doesn't intend on going anywhere, perhaps because of the backing or the training from his wife, Dr. Joe Biden, and perhaps his son as well. And apparently one of his advisors in the White House. Who would have thought? Hunter Biden himself. But the president remains defiant in this interview. And this is a really tough interview. But there are some things that I want to point out about this interview to prove to you that this was a hit job, and it was intended to be a hit job all along. I said this on Mike Gallagher's show when I stood in for him earlier this week. Everybody was saying that this interview was going to be about damage control, or most everybody that I was hearing. And I said, I don't know. If his numbers are cratering, if it's true that his numbers are cratering and his donorship is drying up, how do we know that this isn't a hit job? And guys, I'm telling you, that's exactly what this interview is. So you may have a different opinion. Feel free to comment on this video, and make sure you share with us what you think. Like and subscribe to the podcast, The Carl Jackson Show. Also, follow me on all things social media. I am on X, Instagram, and Facebook. Those are the places where I communicate with people the most. So X, Instagram, and Facebook. But I'm also on Truth Social and Getter. I'm trying to post on those sites more regularly. But I got to tell you, it's just a lot to do, if I'm being honest. But we're going to go through this interview. And again, hit job or damage control. I'm here to tell you that this interview was a hit job. There's nothing that George Stephanopoulos, with the exception of a couple of questions that you'll see for yourself, that he asked Joe Biden in this interview that could not have been asked to Joe Biden in the first year of his presidency, in my opinion. Certainly not the second year of his presidency. So this is a mad dash for the left to get Joe Biden out. Plus, today is July 6th, 2024, just a couple of days after Independence Day. And before we're taping tonight, it is 8:55 p.m. And so just as I looked at Fox News, there was a headline that scrolled across the screen that said Hakeem Jeffries, the new speaker, or the minority leader in the House that took over for Nancy Pelosi, is going to be on a conference call with some Democrat leaders tomorrow, Sunday, 7/7/2024, to discuss Joe Biden's future. Guys, I think they're going to throw the kitchen sink at Joe Biden. Joe Biden, if they want him out, it's got to be quick. It's got to be before he becomes the official nominee, before the delegates, if you will, are bound. Once they are bound, they're going to have a much more difficult time getting Joe Biden to step aside. And already, if they get Joe Biden to step aside, and let me be frank, at this point, since they're not going to invoke the 25th Amendment, I'd rather run against Joe Biden because I believe Democrats have everything coming to them that they deserve. They're trying to throw him under the bus. They've used this man to to destroy the country. They've known all along that this guy was mentally incapable of running the United States of America. They didn't care because they just wanted to keep Trump out of office, and they wanted to retain power for themselves, and they wanted to continue to fundamentally transform America as the way the left sees it, the far left within the Democrat Party. So I believe that the left is getting their comeuppings with Joe Biden. And frankly, since they're not going to invoke the 25th Amendment anyway, I hope that he remains defiant. I hope that he weathers the storm. But The pressure is mounting. The pressure is getting so tense that the Biden family are saying, listen, guys, we just got to stay strong. We've got to weather the storm. That's what I'm reading. They know that they have to weather the storm. If they can weather this storm, and if they can get him to become the nominee of the Democrat Party are going to have an extremely hard time kicking him out. Not to mention, like I said before, they are going to have a hard time already because each state has its own laws when it comes to election law, ballot access, so on, etc. So the fact that Democrats want Joe Biden out tells me that not only do they believe that he's going to lose, they believe that he's going to lose badly. And as a result of him losing badly, they're going to have some down ballot races that they're absolutely terrified of losing. So the latest news, again, Hakeem Jeffries, minority leader, is coming out or having a conference call with apparently some Democrat leaders tomorrow afternoon on Sunday, July 7th, 2024. So it is all hands on deck. Now, I don't know if they're going to say, listen, Jill and Hunter, we're going to guarantee you guys, who knows, $100 million, or if you guys get out the race, you guys are going to have a life that's so cush, it's unbelievable. Their only option appears to be, according to an attorney that I listened to anyway, their only option, if Joe Biden walks away, appears to be Kamala Harris, because she's the only one that can take over his cash, his war chest, if you will. And that's not to say that they can't raise more money, right? That isn't to say that they can't raise more money, but the problem is, it's so late in the season. I simply don't know. They're going to have a very hard time trying to raise money at this point in time, so late in the juncture. So without any further ado, let's go ahead. Let's get this interview started. We'll take it piece by piece. Gabe, if you can help me keep up with the time so that there's no copyright infringement. But this is the interview, Biden's interview with George Stephanopoulos. And again, I contend that this was all about a hit job. This was about damage control. This was about applying the pressure to Biden to force him to get out of the race. This was about applying pressure to make him, in my opinion, look bad. And I got to tell you, even though Biden is Biden, I mean, he's not great in this interview, but he's so much better. Before we get to the video, let me talk to you about Priority Gold. Economists warn that massive tax hikes could devastate your IRA and your 401k account as the stock market braces for impact. With inflation on the rise and global uncertainty looming, it's clear why central banks and savvy Americans are turning to gold. In times like this, Proverbs 21:20 reminds us to preserve what we built. Right now, that wisdom points us towards gold. If you haven't had your eye on gold, time to make it a priority. We know that Russia and China are right now. Hi, my name is Carl Jackson, and I urge you to call my friends at Priority Gold to find out how they can help you diversify your savings with physical gold and silver. Call 1-800-405-GOLD or visit PriorityGold.com/golden for a free gold info guide. Plus, see if you qualify for free shipping and storage as well. Act now to get your portfolio working for you while the market is golden. Call 1-800-405-GOLD to speak with a gold specialist or visit PriorityGold.com/golden to learn more. That's 1-800-405-GOLD or PriorityGold.com/golden for a hedge against inflation. All right, let's get to the the interview with George Stephanopoulos and Joe Biden. Por favor.
We have not touched it. At this pivotal moment in the presidential campaign, here it is. Mr. President, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with the debate. You and your team have said you had a bad night, but your friend Nancy Pelosi actually framed the question that I think is on the minds of millions of Americans. Was this a bad episode or the sign of a more serious condition?
It's a bad episode. No indication of any serious condition. I was exhausted. I didn't listen to my instincts in terms of preparing, and I had a bad night.
You know, you say you were exhausted, and I know you've said that before as well, but you came, and you did have a tough month, but you came home from Europe about 11 or 12 days before the debate, spent 6 days in Camp David. Why wasn't that enough rest time, enough recovery time?
Because I was sick. I was feeling terrible. Matter of fact, the docs with me, I asked if they did a COVID test because they're trying to figure out what's wrong. They did a test to see whether or not I had some infection, a virus. I didn't. They just had a really bad cold.
And did you ever watch the debate afterwards?
I don't think I did, no.
Well, what I want to get at is what were you experiencing as you were going through the debate? Did you know how badly it was going?
Yeah, look, the whole way I prepared, nobody's fault, mine. Nobody's fault but mine. I prepared what I usually would do, sitting down, as I did come back with foreign leaders or the National Security Council, for explicit detail. And I realized about partway through that, I get quoted, the New York Times had me down at 10 points before the debate, 9 now, or whatever the hell it is. The fact of the matter is that what I looked at is that he also lied 28 times. The way the debate ran, not my fault, no one else's fault. No one else's fault.
But it seemed like you were having trouble from the first question in, even before he spoke.
Well, I just had a bad night. You've had some bad interviews once in a while. I can't remember any.
Okay, let me stop it real quick. I want you to pay attention to something that George Stephanopoulos did, which is definitely uncanny for the mainstream media. So with that particular response, and I have the entire transcript of the interview right in front of me. So I'm literally reading the transcript or following along with the transcript. So forgive me. If you're watching me on YouTube, first off, thank you. But please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to our Rumble channel and share it as well. But one of the things that I picked up on is Joe Biden was giving his last answer. The question before was, well, what I want to get at is, this is George Stephanopoulos. What were you experiencing as you were going through the debate? Did you know how badly it was going? Now, here's an indication, Joe Biden gives his answer. And guys, I got to tell you, obviously he looks much better and he's responding much better than he did at the debate. And this guy appears to be, obviously he's slow, he's sluggish, but he's able to answer the questions. He's offering excuses, but he seems as though he's comprehending the questions. But you notice one of the things that he tried to go to right away, or towards the end of that last answering that question from Stephanopoulos, he said, Joe Biden said, I'm quoting, "The fact of the matter is, what I looked at is that he also lied 28 times. Talking about former President Donald Trump, none of the left is telling you what he's lying about. He said, the way the debate ran, not my fault, no one else's fault. No one else's fault. So it's not his fault. So he's basically throwing CNN under the bus. But he said he lied 28 times. He talked about Trump. Now, at any other time, George Stephanopoulos would have capitalized on that. He would have fed on that. He would have started going after Trump. They came in determined to make Joe Biden cry uncle. That's what's happening. That's what you're witnessing there. Nothing has worked for the Democrat Party. All right. They've known all along that in order for Joe Biden to have a repeat of what happened in 2020, he can't hide in the basement anymore. They were going to have to seriously destroy Donald Trump's campaign. How did they elect to do that? They decided that they would throw Joe Biden's opponent in jail. They figured that was their only answer. Remember, none of these prosecutions, I'm calling them persecutions, came until Donald Trump announced that he was going to run for president again. Now, they had all of the information. If any of the things that he did were a crime, they had all of this information, and they had it for years. They decided to wait until Donald Trump announced that he was going to run for president again. And so they thought they had it in the bag. They thought that they could continue to sully Donald Trump's name. They could keep using the J6 narrative. And if all else fails, then we're going to indict him in several different places. We're going to make him look like a fool. We're going to brand him a criminal. We're going to send him to jail. And there's no way he'll be able to win except when he was convicted in that sham trial in New York. Everything went down the tubes, right? Everything went down the tubes. People like you and I donated to the Trump campaign at that point overwhelmingly because we saw exactly what was going on. And then you add to that the Supreme Court decisions that occurred earlier this week or last week. And it was just so many in favor of Trump, especially that immunity case. And that just blew a hole in some of the cases that the left has against Donald Trump. So with Biden's numbers cratering, with the Supreme Court opinions not going in the left's favor, if you will, and then the total backfiring of all these persecutions, the left has no choice now but to try to throw Joe Biden under the bus. The point is, or the question is, will he go? Right now, he remains defiant, in large part due to his family. Let's go ahead and roll it, Gabe, por favor.
Ready? I'm sure you did.
I've had plenty. I guess the question, the problem is here for a lot of Americans watching is you've said, going back to 2020, watch me, to people who are concerned about your age. And, 50 million Americans watched that debate. It seemed to confirm fears they already had.
Well, look, after that debate, I did 10 major events in a row, including till 2 o'clock in the morning after that debate. I did events in North Carolina. I did events in Georgia. Did events like this today. Large crowds, overwhelming response, no slipping. And so I just had a bad night. I don't know why.
And how quickly did it come to you that you were having that bad night?
Well, it came to me as having a bad night when I realized that even when I was answering a question, even though they turned his mic off, he was still shouting. And I let it distract me. I'm not blaming it on that. But I realized that I just wasn't in control.
What?
Part of the other concern is that this seems to have fit into
We
a
all watched
pattern
that
of
interview.
decline
Trump held his
that has been
tongue.
reported on recently. New York Times had a headline on July 2nd, Biden's lapses are said to be increasingly common and worrisome. Here's what they wrote. People who have spent time with President Biden over the last few months or so said the lapses appear to have grown more frequent, more pronounced, and after Thursday's debate, more worrisome. By many accounts, as evidenced by video footage, observation, and interviews, Mr. Biden is not the same today as he was even when he took office 3.5 years ago. Similar reporting in the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. Are you the same man today that you were when you took office 3.5 years ago?
Just a quick stop here, Gabe. Just a quick stop. All right. So now here's what George Stephanopoulos does for credibility's sake. All right, or to get at Joe Biden. This isn't he's telling him that these reports or these concerns are coming from people from the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal has some pretty conservative op-ed writers, but in general, it is not necessarily a conservative paper, if you will. So he's trying to tell him, listen, man, this isn't right-wing radicals, if you will. Our people, the media, our left-wing media is basically saying you don't have it anymore. Let's go ahead and keep rolling, Gabe.
I says, yes. I also was the guy who put together a peace plan for the Middle East that may be coming to fruition. I was also the guy that expanded NATO. I was also the guy that grew the economy. All the individual things that were done were ideas I had or I fulfilled. I moved on. And so, for example, well, that was true then. What's Biden done lately? Just today, just announced 200,000 new jobs. We're moving in a direction that no one's ever taken on. I know you know this from the days in the government. I took on Big Pharma. I beat them. No one said I could beat them. I took on all the things we said we got done. We were told we couldn't get done. And part of it is what I said when I ran was I wanted to do 3 things. Restore some decency to the office. Restore some support for the middle class instead of trickle-down economics, built from the middle out and the bottom up. That way the wealthy still do fine, everyone does better. And unite the country.
But what has all that work over the last 3.5 years cost you physically, mentally, emotionally?
Well, I just think it cost me a really bad night, a bad run. But, George, I'm optimistic about this country. I don't think we're a country of losers, that he points out. I don't think America's in tough shape. I think America's on the cusp of breaking through in so many incredible opportunities.
Hold it for just a sec, Gabe. All right, so notice George Stephanopoulos used a little psychology, in my opinion. He let Biden talk about all the things that he had done, his accomplishments, which were no accomplishments at all. The Middle East, that He talked about I also was the guy that who put together a peace plan for the middle, a peace plan for the middle. The Middle East is on fire, you freaking idiot. I was also the guy that expanded NATO. You're also the guy that's responsible for Russia invading Ukraine. He's talked about how he restored some decency. He talked about how he restored some support for the middle class instead of trickle down economics. If you're in the middle class like I am, are you feeling that type of support? Are you feeling that type of relief? What type of decency did he restore? Did he restore to the White House? Only working from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., allegedly allowing his crackhead son to live in the White House, allowing his staffers to run it, or the administrative state, weaponizing the DOJ against Donald Trump, opening or keeping the borders open. I'm trying to figure out how he brought decency to the presidency. I mean, this guy is chock full of lies. But the funny thing is, George Stephanopoulos says nothing about that. He basically encourages him. Hey, yeah, you did a good job. You know, I'm paraphrasing here. He says, actually, I don't need to paraphrase because I have the transcript right in front of me. He says, but what has all that work over the last 3.5 years cost you physically, mentally, emotionally? In other words, man, you've done a great job. If you walked away now, it'll be okay. You've done great. You've done everything you set out to do. It's okay to walk away. He's being really sly. I give it to him. Let's go ahead and roll it, Gabe.
This next term, I'm going to make sure we have straighten out the tax system. I'm going to make sure we're in a situation where we have health care for all people, where we're in a position where we have child care and elder care, free up, and all these things. The one thing I'm proudest of is, remember when my economic plan was put forward, a lot of the mainstream economists said it's not going to work. Well, guess what? We now have 16 Nobel laureates, 16 of them in economics, saying that Biden's next term would be, based on what he wants to do, enormous success. Trump's plan would cause a recession, would significantly increase inflation. I've made great progress, and that's what I plan on doing, and we can do this.
I understand that, and I'm not disputing that. What I'm asking you is about your personal situation. Do you dispute that there have been more lapses, especially in the last several months?
Can I run the 110 flat? No. But I'm still in good shape.
I'm actually impressed by that.
Are you more frail?
No.
I know you spoke.
Keep my schedule.
I know you spoke with your doctor after the debate. What did he say?
He said, he just looked at me and said, "You're exhausted." I said, "Look, I have medical doctors traveling everywhere. Every president does, as you know. Medical doctors, some of the best in the world, travel me everywhere I go. I have an ongoing assessment of what I'm doing. And they don't hesitate to tell me if they think there's something wrong."
I know you said you have an ongoing assessment. Have you had a full neurological and cognitive evaluation?
I get a full neurological test every day with me. And I've had a full physical. I had, I've been at Walter Reed for my physicals. Yes, the answer is.
I know your doctor said he consulted with a neurologist. I guess I'm asking a slightly different question. Have you had the specific cognitive tests, and have you had a neurologist, a specialist, do an examination?
Okay, hold on just a second. I have to give it to this guy. Hold on just a sec, Gabe. I have to give it to this guy. Remember, George Stephanopoulos used to be the communications director for the Bill Clinton machine. I forgot about that, to be frank with you, until I watched a video of Megyn Kelly just breaking down how evil this little punk is. All right, so earlier today, and what he did in his war room with James Carville to discredit all of the ladies that came out against Bill Clinton that said this guy sexually assaulted me, or even worse. In some cases. But if I could go back just a second, Biden was forward looking. He started talking about all the things that he can do, the things that he's proud of, and the things that he wants to do in the future. He said, one thing I'm proudest of is, remember when my economic plan was put forward, a lot of the mainstream economists, this is not gonna work. Guess what? We now have 16 Nobel laureates, 16 of them in economics, saying that Biden's next term would be a sig and they're based on what I don't even know what he's trying to say, what he wants to do, enormous success. I'm reading the transcripts, but some of it is just Biden talk, so you can't understand it. Trump's plan will cause a recession and significant increase inflation. I've made great progress, and that's what I plan on doing. And we can do this. So instead of building on the future, he was trying to campaign in front of George Stephanopoulos. This is what I'll do for the future. George Stephanopoulos doesn't want him to get away with it, and he wants the viewer to constantly think about Joe Biden's frail health, his deteriorating health. And he's doing a good job sticking to this. He's not letting Biden get away with any of this stuff. Earlier on, I forget where I forget where I placed it, but basically he said, here it is. Earlier on, he said George Stephanopoulos did. I've had plenty. I can remember. I've had plenty. I guess the question of the problem is here for a lot of Americans watching is, you said going back to 2020, watch me, quote unquote, to people who are concerned about your age. And 50 million Americans watched that debate. It seemed to confirm fears they already had. They already had, George? Did you have those fears? Were you aware of those fears as an insider? These people are just scam artists, man. I just get so offended that they think that we're so stupid. I hope that, frankly, since they're not invoking the 25th Amendment, I pray to God they're stuck with Joe Biden. I know the pressure is on like Donkey Kong, but I hope to God they get stuck with Joe Biden. Let's go ahead and roll it, Gabe.
Would you be willing to undergo an independent medical evaluation that included neurological and cognitive tests and release the results to the American people?
Look, I have a cognitive test every single day. Every day I have that test. Everything I do. Not only am I campaigning, but I'm running the world. And that's not how it sounds like hyperbole. But we are the essential nation in the world. Madeleine Albright was right. And every single day, for example, today, before I come out here, I'm on the phone with the Prime Minister of, anyway, I shouldn't get into detail, but with Netanyahu. I'm on the phone with the new Prime Minister of England. I'm working on what we're doing with regard to, in Europe, with regard to expansion of NATO and whether it's going to stick. I'm taking on Putin. I mean, every day, there's no day I go through, there are not those decisions I have to make every single day.
And you have been doing that, and the American people have been watching, yet their concerns about your age and your health are growing. So that's why I'm asking, to reassure them, would you be willing to have the independent medical evaluation?
Watch me there's a lot of time left in this campaign.
You think he would
it's
have
over 125 days?
Asked this question before
So
the debate?
Decision.
The right answer right now is no, you don't want to do that right now.
I've already done it.
You talked a lot about your successes at the beginning of this interview, and I don't want to dispute that. I don't want to debate that. But as you know, elections are about the future, not the past. They're about tomorrow, not yesterday. And the question on so many people's minds right now is, can you serve effectively for the next 4 years?
George, I'm the guy that put NATO together, the future. No one thought I could expand it. I'm the guy that shoved Putin down. No one thought could happen. I'm the guy that put together the South Pacific Initiative with AUKUS. I'm the guy that got 50 nations, out, not only in Europe, outside of Europe as well, to help Ukraine. I'm the guy that got Japanese to expand their budget. For example, when I decided we used to have 40% of the computer chip, and we invented the chip, that little chip for the computer chip. It's in everything from cell phone to weapons. And so we used to have 40%, and we're down to virtually nothing. So I get in the plane against the advice of everybody, and I fly to South Korea. I convinced them to invest in the United States, billions of dollars. Now we have tens of billions of dollars being invested in the United States, making us back in a position where we're going to own that industry again. We have, anyway, I don't want to take too much credit. I have a great staff.
But I guess my point is, all that takes a toll. Do you have the mental and physical capacity to do it for another 4 years?
I believe so. I wouldn't be running if I didn't think I did. Look, I'm running again because I think I understand best what has to be done to take this nation to a completely new level. We're on our way. We're on our way. And look, the decision recently made by the Supreme Court on immunity, the next president of the United States, it's not just about whether he or she knows what they're doing. It's not about a conglomerate of people making decisions. It's about the character of the president. The character of the president is going to determine whether or not this Constitution is employed.
Quick pause, Gabe. All right, so that answer just simply doesn't fly anymore. All right, he can degrade the Supreme Court all he wants to. He can talk badly about them all he wants to. The point of the matter is, with that immunity case, all of these George Soros prosecutors going after Trump are going to have a really hard time. George Stephanopoulos knows that. He knows that was part of the game plan. They're all in on it. I can't stand these fools. It frustrates me because I understand people like myself and Gabe, who's with me tonight to help film this or record this podcast. I mean, this is stuff that we talk about, read about all the time. The average American citizen, honestly, they just want to live their life, and then when it's time to vote, they'll show up to vote. I mean, let's just be real about it. That's the way that it is. So I just get frustrated because I understand how these people are just playing a game, how they're just lying to you. There's a lot of political theater involved in politics. I tell you what, that show House of Cards, it was pretty disgusting and despicable. I wouldn't recommend you go back and watch it. But there's so much truth, I believe, to that former Netflix series with Kevin Spacey. It's unbelievable. All right, let's go ahead and roll it, por favor, Gabe.
Employ it the right way.
Let me ask you a tougher, more personal question. Are you sure you're being honest with yourself when you say you have the mental and physical capacity to serve another 4 years?
Yes, I am.
These are questions he's going to think about after this interview.
Is not be able to meet that. I think, as some of the senior economists and senior foreign policy specialists say, if I stop now, I'd go down in history as a pretty successful president. No one thought I could get done what we got done.
But are you being honest with yourself as well about your ability to defeat Donald Trump right now?
Yes. Wow. Yes. You
say that, and let me challenge you.
Sure.
Because you were close, but behind going into the debate. You're further behind now, by any measure. It's been a two-man race for several months. Inflation has come down. In those last few months, he's become a convicted felon, yet you're still falling further behind.
You guys keep saying that. George, you know polling better than anybody. Do you think polling data is accurate as it used to be?
I don't think so, but I think when you look at all of the polling data right now, it shows that he's certainly ahead in the popular vote, probably even more ahead in the battleground states. And one of the other key factors there is it shows that in many of the battleground states, the Democrats who are running for Senate and the House are doing better than you are.
Well, that's not unusual in some states. I carried an awful lot of Democrats last time I ran in 2020. Look, I remember them telling me the same thing in 2020.
It doesn't matter.
I can't win. The polls show I can't win. Remember 2020, the red wave was coming. Before the vote, I said that's not going to happen. We're going to win. We did better in an off year than almost any incumbent president ever has done. They said in 2023, all the tough races, we're not going to win. I went into all those areas, all those districts, and we won.
All that is true, but 2020 was a close race. And your approval rating has dropped significantly since then. I think the last poll I saw was at about 36%. The number of Americans who think you're too old to serve has doubled since 2020. Wouldn't a clear-eyed political calculus tell you that it's going to be much tougher to win in 2024?
Not when you're running against a pathological liar. Not when he hadn't been challenged in a way that he's about to be challenged. Not when people...
You've had months to challenge him.
Oh, sure I had months, but I was also doing a hell of a lot of other things, like wars around the world, like keeping NATO together.
Starting them?
Like working, anyway. But look.
Do you really believe you're not behind right now?
I think all the pollsters I talk to tell me it's a toss-up. It's a toss-up. And when I'm behind...
Stop. That was clever. All right. Okay. Now, Gabe, tell me how you saw that question. I think people will look at that question or listen to that question. And, some people might just say, yeah, do you really believe you're ahead right now? Maybe sarcastically or whatever, or tough love. Or you might look at it like, are you delusional? I'm calling you out. I'm putting you on the spot. there's a big difference between 2022 and 2024. The get out the vote effort in the Republican Party. You can say what you will about abortion. Obviously, that excited some people, but the Democrat Party were ballot harvesting. The Republican Party was not. Also, it was an off-year election. Guys, we just have to face it. In off-year elections, people aren't as excited to vote. Republicans used to be better at it for whatever reason. I won't go into detail. I could actually, but for whatever reason, we're not as good at it anymore. But now this is a presidential election. More people are going to show up, and more people are going to vote up and down the ballot. And when you have nearly, I think I forget what the polling was, somewhere in the high 60s of people that think that Joe Biden is incapable or mentally incapable of running the country anymore, I don't know that you can roll that back, because now everything they see, they're going to question. And George Stephanopoulos is doing a good job of, wait a minute, do you really think you can win? And how did he put it? Do you really believe you're not behind right now? Honestly, this is a masterclass. This fool is better than I thought. All right, let's go ahead and roll it, Gabe.
There's only one poll I'm really far behind, CBS poll and NBC, and
New York Times and NBC both have you about 6 points behind in the popular vote.
That's exactly right. New York Times had me behind before anything happened to do with this race. Had me behind 10 points. 10 points had me behind. Nothing's changed substantially in the debate, the New York Times poll.
Just when you look at the reality, though, Mr. President, I mean, you won the popular vote in 2020, but it was still deadly close in the Electoral
By
College.
7 million votes.
Yes, but you're behind now in the popular vote.
I don't buy that.
Is it worth the risk?
I don't think anybody's
Well, now
more
he's a little
qualified to be
frustrated.
president or win this race than me.
You know, the heart of your case against Donald Trump is that he's only out for himself, putting his personal interest ahead of the national interest. How do you respond to critics who say that by staying in the race, you're doing the same thing?
Oh, come on. Well, I don't think those critics know what they're talking about.
They're just wrong.
It's wrong. Look, Trump is a pathological liar. Trump is, he is. Have you ever seen anything Trump did that benefited somebody else, not him? You can't answer, I know.
I've questioned him and his allies as persistently as any journalist has.
No, I know you have. I'm not being
Yeah.
critical.
Yeah.
I'm not being critical. But look, I mean,
Yes, you are. Uh-oh. Brain
the
freeze.
man is a congenital liar. As I said, they pointed out in that debate he lied 28 times the times, or whatever number.
About what?
Over 20 times.
About what?
Talk about how good his economy was, how he brought down inflation, how this is a guy who, unlike only other president other than him is Hoover, lost more jobs than he created. This is a guy who told us to put bleach in our arms to deal with COVID. With
Another lie
over a
that's
million
been
people
debunked.
died. This is a guy who talks about wanting to get rid of the health care provision we put in place. This is a guy who wants to give the power back to big pharma to be able to charge exorbitant prices for drugs. This is a guy who wants to undo every single thing I've done. Every single thing.
I understand that. I understand that's why you want to stay in the race. But have you convinced yourself that only you can defeat him?
I convinced myself of two things. I'm the most qualified person to beat him, and I know how to get things done.
Stop real quick. He didn't convince himself of that. Thank you, Gabe. He didn't convince himself of that. You know who convinced him of that besides Joe Biden, besides Hunter Biden, and besides his aides in his immediate circle? People like George Stephanopoulos, who wouldn't give an interview like this 3 years ago when they should have. That's who convinced them. So to sit here on their little high horse, and pretend like they're all high and mighty, pretend like they're trying to do the right thing for the country, when all they're trying to do is freaking save, Democrat jobs, Democrat politicians. It's absolutely absurd. How many tough interviews have you seen like this for Joe Biden? The guy can just come into a press room and give a short speech and then just turn around and walk away, or he can barely walk. But he'll walk away and not answer any questions. And then no one has any tough questions for him. You mean to tell me that little old me was able to figure out, I don't know, 5 years ago, looking at Biden like, why is this guy in the race? At first thinking he can't win, and thinking he can't win in part because he had dementia. And then James Clyburn comes in. And guys, I've been saying this for years. Not just me, a lot of you have. We've all seen it. Now, these guys, the so-called experts, the journalists, the ones that are supposed to do the investigative work, are now figuring this out. This was a hit job. This was a hit job and nothing more. And I am so glad that Joe Biden is remaining defiant. Let's go ahead and roll it here, Gabe. We're almost done.
You can be convinced that you cannot defeat Donald Trump. Will you stand down?
Whoa, if you can be
It
convinced.
depends if the Lord Almighty comes out and tells me that, I might do that.
Well, I mean, on a more practical
That's
level,
defiant.
Washington Post just reported in the last hour that Senator Mark Warner is assembling a group of senators together to try and convince you to stand down because they don't think you can win.
Well, Mark is a good man. We've never had that. He also tried to get the nomination too. Mark and I have a different perspective. I respect him.
Oh, hold on, Gabe. Listen, okay, so this is a podcast. All right, I'm sorry, I got tongue-tied. This is a podcast, 9:42 p.m., 7/6/2024. Look at this headline that's popped up on Real Clear Politics. Biden's team drafted questions for first post-debate interviews. The guy isn't there. The guy cannot be trusted with the powers that he wields as the president of the United States. And again, his team working with him. Oh, this is Axios. Axios is trying to shiv this guy. President Biden's White House went around its normal processes for his first post-debate interview with a black radio station earlier this week. The White House helped draft the questions that the host asked the president. Then the Biden campaign sent them to the radio station, given it was technically a campaign interview. A person familiar with the matter tells Axios. Of course, WURD is the only African-American owned and operated talk radio station in Pennsylvania, but the White House's director of black media was not part of the process. Okay, let's roll. Sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess you would have to believe that Democrats really care about black people to believe that his black media, his director of black media would be part of that process. All right, let's roll again.
And if Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and Nancy Pelosi come down and say, we're worried that if you stay in the race, we're going to lose the House and the Senate, how will you respond?
Man.
I go into detail with them. I've spoken to all of them in detail, including Jim Clyburn. Every one of them. They all said I should stay in the race. Stay in the race. No one said,
Jim Clyburn, black vote.
should leave.
But if they do,
Well, it's like, they're not going to do that.
you sure?
Well, yeah, I'm sure. Look, I mean, if the Lord Almighty came down and said, Joe, get out of the race, I'd get out of the race. The Lord Almighty's not coming down. I mean, these hypotheticals, George, if all...
But it's not that hypothetical anymore. I grant that they have not requested the meeting, but it's been reported.
I met with them. I've met with a lot of these people. I've talked with them regularly. I had an hour conversation with Hakeem.
That's before they looked at the latest polls.
With Jim Clyburn. I spent time with many hours off and on the last little bit with Chuck Schumer. It's not like I had all the governors.
I agree that the Lord Almighty is not going to come down, but if you are told reliably from your allies, from your friends and supporters in the Democratic Party, in the House and the Senate, that they're concerned you're going to lose the House and the Senate if you stay in, what will you do?
I'm not going to answer that question. It's not going to happen.
What's your plan to turn the campaign around?
Man, hold on for just a sec. This is so juicy. All right, guys, I'm watching this for the second time with Gabe here and going through this. This guy just remains defiant. George Stephanopoulos gave him every scenario. This was George Stephanopoulos signaling to the leadership in the Democrat Party, hey, this is what it's going to take. What if you guys come to him? Hey, it's not going to happen. So now you have this report that came out earlier today. Again, it's July 6, 2024, Saturday night, that Hakeem Jeffries will be on a conference call with other Democrats, leaders, and candidates, apparently, to discuss Joe Biden's future. So everything that George Stephanopoulos was saying, what if, this stuff is going to come to fruition. The Democrats have a very short window to make sure this stuff happens. If Joe Biden can survive this onslaught, I thought if he survived through the weekend, he'd be fine. But the pressure is wrapping up so intensely, I'm not exactly sure anymore. But if he can get the nomination, if he can hold out until then, if his family can convince him to hold out until then, Democrats will just have to shut their pie holes and just try to continue to write. All right, we're about to finish up with this interview, but before we do, I just want to remind you guys, if you need a good night's rest or you just want some American-made products for a great price, check out Mike Lindell's MyPillow.com. Right now, they have a $25 extravaganza that is going on. Mike started out, as you guys may know, with one product, but with the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products when you go to MyPillow.com. So to get the word out, what Mike has done since he's been canceled by the box stores and some of these shopping channels, he's going directly to you via people like myself. So right now, Mike has invited you to play a part in this $25 extravaganza, or take advantage of it, I should say. 2-pack multi-use My Pillows are just $25. My Pillow sandals are $25. Their 6-pack towel sets are just $25. And for the first time ever, the premium My Pillows with the all-new Giza fabric, those are just $25. Orders over $75 will receive free shipping as well. So this amazing offer won't last long. Go to MyPillow.com. Use the promo code Carl, C-A-R-L. I don't spell it like the communists. Or give them a call, 800-858-0263. That's promo code Carl. All right, Gabe, let's go ahead and roll this, por favor.
You saw it today. How many people do you draw crowds like I drew today? You find many more enthusiastic than today? Huh?
I mean, I don't think you want to play the crowd game. Donald Trump can draw big
journalists.
crowds. There's no question about that.
You can draw a big crowd, but what does he say? Who does he have? I'm the guy supposedly in trouble. We raised $38 million within 4 days after this. We have over 1 million individual contributors. Less than $200. I mean, I've not seen what you're proposing.
You haven't seen the fall off in the polls. You haven't seen the reports of discontent in the Democratic Party, House Democrats, Senate Democrats.
I've seen it from the press.
You know, I've heard from dozens of your supporters over the last few days, and a variety of views. I grant you that. But the prevailing sentiment is this. They love you, and they will be forever grateful to you for defeating Donald Trump in 2020. They think you've done a great job as president, a lot of the successes you outlined. But they are worried about you and the country, and they don't think you can win. They want you to go with grace, and they will cheer you if you do. What do you say to them?
I say the vast majority are not where those folks are. I don't doubt there's some folks there. Have you ever seen a group at time when elected officials running for office aren't a little worried? Have you ever seen that? I've not. Same thing happened in 2020. Oh, Biden, I don't know, man. What's he going to do? He may bring me down. He may.
Mr. President, I've never seen a president at 36% approval get reelected.
Well, I don't believe that's my approval rate. That's not what our polls show.
Dang.
And if you stay in and Trump is elected and everything you're warning about comes to pass, how will you feel in January?
I feel as long as I gave it my all and I did the goodest job as I know I can do. That's what this is about. Look, George, think of it this way. You've heard me say this before. I think the United States and the world is at an inflection point where the things that happen in the next several years are going to determine what the next 6, 7 decades look like. And who's going to be able to hold NATO together like me? Who's going to be able to be in a position where I'm able to keep the Pacific Basin in a position where we're at least checkmating China now? Who's going to do that? Who has that reach?
China-Russia-Iran alliance is forming. North Korea.
I guess
this guy's clueless, man.
Is you're going to have now the NATO conference here in the United States next week.
I'm convinced that people have been telling them his policies work.
See what they say.
Mr. President, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So there it was. That was the Biden interview with George Stephanopoulos in its entirety. No doubt in my mind, that was a hit job. That was George Stephanopoulos being blunt with him at times. I've never seen a president 36 approval get reelected. I mean, at the end, he's just like, dude, I've only got so much time. And I'm telling you, George Stephanopoulos, I got to be frank with you. I hate to give these liberals credit, especially since I know George Stephanopoulos was complicit with the Biden administration in destroying the country for the last 3.5 years. But now that this guy is playing politics, I see why he was a communications director, evil man, communications director. However, for Bill Clinton, the guy was masterful. I mean, the guy used psychology. The guy tried to encourage Joe Biden. He tried to play the guilt card, or tried to play the, I don't even know how you would explain it, but just tried to appeal to his senses. Like, dude, you can go out with you can go out with a great legacy as opposed to going out losing. And, obviously Biden's still remaining defiant. But the key is basically, from everything that I'm reading, the key is Jill Biden. The key is Hunter Biden. They have dug in. They have said that Joe Biden shouldn't go. They have encouraged him not to go. But if at some point in time they go, maybe it's got to be a sweetheart deal. Then they were going to have to persuade Jill Biden. They're going to have to persuade Hunter Biden. Or if they weather this storm, Democrats are going to have to shut up and get on board and just pray that the losses. And listen, I don't want to pretend like this is 2022. I think things are looking bad. I really don't think that Democrats would be this desperate to destroy Joe Biden if the internal polling did not suggest that they were in horrible shape, in a horrible condition, with just losing voters. And now when you have people that are, they may not vote for Trump, but when they believe that this guy is incompetent and now seeing it, you can't unsee that. You can't unsee that debate. Now, every time somebody looks at Joe Biden now, they're gonna wonder. They're gonna wait for that slip up. And George Stephanopoulos is complicit in this too. Guys, listen, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast, listening to the Stephanopoulos hit job with me. And it was fun. And I guess I will see you Monday. Until next time, do not grow weary doing good. God bless you.